We were in Miami for a fundraising gala. Big deal. Black ties, big checks, lights everywhere. I was there as a guest of honor, recognition for my service, apparently. A face of integrity, they called it in the program. That part's funny now. She was glowing. Hair perfect, dress fitted just right. That kind of quiet confidence women know how to wear when they think everyone's watching. And she knew everyone was. She'd helped organize the damn thing. Months of prep. Meetings. Dresses. Sponsors. Especially one. Kenneth Vale. Old money. Real estate mogul. One of the event's top donors. Silver hair, gold cufflinks, fake smile. The kind of guy who called everyone champ. I didn't like him from the start. She said I was being protective. Turns out I was being right. Midway through the night, I had to step backstage. A coordinator asked me to review the cue sheet before I went on stage for a thank you speech. She said she'd stay at the table, keep networking. But when I came around the far corner, behind the curtain, I saw them. It wasn't subtle. His hand was on her waist. Her fingers were brushing his collar. And they were close. Too close. Then they kissed. Not a peck. Not drunk and clumsy. It was slow. Like they'd done it before. Like this wasn't new. I didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there. She pulled back first. Eyes wide. Saw me. For half a second, I thought she'd collapse. Instead, she froze. "It's not what it looks like," she said. That's the line they always use, right? Except this time, it was exactly what it looked like. I looked at her. Then at him. He straightened his jacket like he was fixing a microphone. No apology. No fear. Just adjustment. I said nothing. Turned. Walked back into the lights like nothing had happened. Applause hit as I stepped on stage. Spotlights. Smiling faces. Music swelled. I took the mic. Said what I was supposed to say. Thanked the donors. Thanked the foundation. Thanked my incredible wife. She smiled from the crowd. No one else knew. But I did. And now, nothing was ever going to feel real again. I walked out without looking back. No scene. No raised voice. No smashed glass. Just the kind of exit that makes it worse, because no one knows what just happened except the three people involved. Outside, the air hit harder than I expected. Miami heat wrapped around me like it was trying to pull me back in. I kept walking. Didn't know where I was going. Just knew I couldn't breathe under those chandeliers anymore. Every step away from that building felt like stripping off another layer of fiction. The perfect couple act. The networking smiles. The toast to our shared future. All of it, gone in 20 silent seconds behind a velvet curtain. I ended up sitting in a black car with a driver who thought I just needed a break. He asked, "Back to the hotel, sir?" I nodded. Couldn't speak. On the way, I looked out at the city and thought about the way she looked tonight. Flawless. Controlled. Polished like she belonged in a magazine ad for success. I used to be proud of that. Now it felt like watching a stranger perform a version of someone I used to love. At the hotel, I went straight to the bar. Still in uniform, still wearing that decorated guest of honor energy I hadn't yet washed off. Bartender offered champagne. I said, "No." Ordered a neat bourbon. 2 fingers. No ice. Didn't even touch it for 10 minutes. I just sat there, staring at the glass, letting the weight of the night settle somewhere deep in my ribs. She used to say she was tired of being just a wife. That the world made her feel invisible. That no one knew her name, just mine. I tried to fix that. Pushed her to take more space. Encouraged her to lead this year's gala. She was proud of it. All the calls, meetings, Donor meetings? Especially with him. I remembered her showing me emails. Look at this. He said I've got a natural presence. That I should do PR. She said it with pride. I smiled then. Because I trusted her. Now I knew better. I wasn't her partner. I was her accessory. A uniform with a pulse. A respectable face to round out the story. And that kiss backstage? That was her real moment. I didn't go back to the room. I sat in the lobby for hours. Somewhere between numb and awake. She never came back that night. Maybe she stayed to clean up the event. Maybe she stayed with him. Didn't matter. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A message from her. Please talk. It's not what you think. I stared at it. Funny how people always say that after you catch them doing the exact thing you always feared. I locked the screen. Didn't reply. Let the message sit there like a loose wire, sparking nothing. At 2 a.m., I went up, showered, and stared at my uniform on the chair. Still looked clean. Still looked strong. Still didn't mean a damn thing to her. I laid down and tried to sleep. Didn't work. Because once you pull back the curtain, you can't unsee what's behind it. She asked to meet the next morning. Said she needed to explain. I picked a neutral spot, quiet cafe 2 blocks from the hotel, mostly empty, no music, no stage to perform on. I got there first. Black coffee, no food. I wasn't hungry. Just waiting for the last pieces to fall into place. She came in like she hadn't just been caught. Hair up, sunglasses, that effortless. Control the optics. Look. Sat down across from me like it was just another morning in our life. I'm glad you came, she said. I didn't answer. She took a breath. I know what it looked like last night. I raised an eyebrow. Then don't insult me by telling me it wasn't that. She looked down. Hands folded on the table. He supports the foundation. It got complicated. Complicated? I repeated. She nodded. It started as meetings. Then dinners. Then more. I didn't plan it, but the funding mattered. I cut in. Silence. You didn't want to lose the money, I said. Her voice dropped. I didn't want to lose everything we built. I let that hang in the air for a second. So he pays and you lie. She flinched. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. She looked up, finally angry. You don't understand how much pressure I was under. I was running everything while you were gone half the time. Do you have any idea what it's like to be invisible? I tilted my head. So this was visibility? No, she snapped. This was me doing what I had to do so this thing didn't fall apart. So your image, our image, stayed intact. Our image, I echoed. People saw you as a hero. A soldier. A symbol. You think that just happens? That just magically builds itself? I leaned forward. Calm. Measured. So while I was deployed, giving speeches about service and integrity, you were locking lips with a donor behind a curtain. It wasn't like that, she said again, quieter now. You've said that 3 times, I said. And every time, it means less. She stared. Eyes glassy now. But no tears. Just calculation. Do you even care why it started? She asked. I stood up. I care how it ended. She reached for my hand across the table. I didn't move. You were never really there, she whispered. Always in your head. Or overseas. Or distracted by missions I wasn't part of. I nodded. And now I know what you did when I gave you space. She looked like she wanted to say something more. Maybe spin it. Maybe beg. Maybe accuse. Didn't matter. I dropped a $10 on the table for the coffee and said 2 words. I'm done. Then I walked out. No look back. No dramatic pause. No half-open door waiting for her to follow. Just the clean, quiet sound of walking away from someone who thinks betrayal is just a negotiation. I didn't go home right away. Stayed in Miami for one more day, mostly because I couldn't bring myself to sit on a plane next to strangers and pretend I wasn't unraveling. So I told myself I'd just finish out the week. Close the loop. The foundation still had meetings lined up. Press debriefs. Follow-up media spots. My name was still on the schedule. I didn't show up for most of it, but I went back to the venue the next afternoon to pick up a plaque they prepared. Some formal thank you for my dedication to service and unity. What a joke. Inside, the place was already half torn down. Lights packed. Tables bare. You could smell old champagne on the carpet. Behind the scenes, a few people were still around, wrapping things up, carrying boxes, checking inventory. No one looked twice at me. Just another part of the machine. I walked to the back office, where the foundation kept their event files. An assistant named Rachel recognized me and smiled, awkwardly, like she wasn't sure if I'd heard rumors or not. I nodded politely. Asked about the plaque. She handed it over from a filing cabinet, and as she did, I heard voices in the hallway. Two men. Laughing. One of them was Graham, senior coordinator, been with the foundation for over a decade. Ran the back end, logistics, all the stuff people don't clap for. The other voice I didn't recognize. They were talking about the event, making light of something. I didn't catch the full setup, but one line cut through, loud and casual. Well, at least this time he picked someone who already knew the script. I froze. Graham chuckled. You're a bastard, man. The other guy shrugged. Just saying. Last time was a mess. I stepped out of the office and turned the corner. Hey, what was that? They both looked at me. Graham smiled a little too quickly. Oh, hey! You heading out? What did you just say? He blinked. What do you mean? Something about someone already knowing the script. He hesitated. Ah, just joking around. You know how these things go. Lot of moving pieces. Not everything's neat. My voice stayed flat. Who was he talking about? He waved it off. Come on, man. Don't overthink. Everyone's tired. Nobody meant anything. I just stared at him. Graham shifted uncomfortably. You know how these donors are. Big personalities. Big habits. They work, however they work. Right, I said. And my wife? He didn't answer. Just clapped me on the shoulder like that would cover everything. I walked out of there with the plaque in one hand and a quiet storm brewing in the other. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But I was done pretending it ended with her and that kiss. There was more. Something in that hallway confirmed what I hadn't let myself believe. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't new. And maybe she wasn't a victim of bad judgment. Maybe she was part of the pattern. I couldn't let it go. I tried to file it under. People make mistakes. Under. Emotions happen. Under whatever soft category people use when they don't want to admit they were played. But that one line kept looping in my head. At least this time he picked someone who already knew the script. There's something about the word script that stuck in my throat. Scripts mean planning, rehearsal, roles. This wasn't some affair. This was casting. So I started digging. Not like a detective. More like a man who couldn't sleep. Late nights. Quiet searches. Looking through event photos, donor announcements, foundation newsletters. Tried not to think about how familiar this felt, like intel work during deployment. Only now, the mission was my life. It took me 3 nights to find the first lead. An archived press article from 2 years ago. Same foundation, Same annual gala, same keynote donor, Kenneth Vale. Different city. Different woman on his arm. She wasn't labeled as his date. She was communications liaison for the nonprofit. Smiling, graceful, elegant. Next to her, in a separate cropped photo, a man in uniform. Lieutenant James R. Colby, former Navy. Listed as spouse and supporting partner. I froze. Same dynamic, same roles, same public image. I dug deeper. Found Colby's military contact. Out of service now. No listed socials. But his wife, or ex-wife, was tagged in an old article about women in nonprofit leadership. I clicked through. Found her profile. Private. Minimal details. One professional headshot. No husband in sight. I hesitated, then sent a message. Hi. I don't mean to intrude. I believe we may have something in common. I'd like to ask you one question off the record. No drama. Just the truth. Didn't expect a reply. She read it 2 days later. No typing. No dots. Then she blocked me. I figured that was it. But the next morning, I woke up to a message from an unknown number. You're not the first. You won't be the last. Attached was a photo. Grainy. Taken backstage at what looked like a banquet hall. Kenneth Vale. Leaning in. Arm around a woman in a satin blue dress. Same hand placement. Same fake charm. Different woman. But the pose? Identical to the one I'd seen with my wife. Under the photo, she'd added one line. He finds women who want the spotlight, then gives them a script. I sat there for a long time. Not moving. Not breathing. Because now, it wasn't about who cheated on who. It was about why. And I wasn't dealing with a broken marriage anymore. I was standing in the middle of a business model. After that photo, I stopped looking for emotional closure. This wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was about structure. And the more I looked at it like a system, the more it all made sense. So I followed the one thing that never lies. Money. Foundations like this one are required to publish certain financial disclosures. Not everything, of course. The real stuff is buried. But if you know what to look for, if you know how paper trails are laid out, you can read between the polished press releases. I started with the year-end summaries. The kind they use to impress donors. It looked clean at first glance. Grants, donations, strategic partnerships. But when I cross-referenced the top-level donor list with a public registry, something jumped out. One of the donation routes, $1.2 million listed as corporate contribution, didn't trace back to a recognizable name. It went to a Shell LLC out of Delaware. No website. No press. Just a mailbox. When I checked the state filings, the company's managing agent was tied to another firm. And that firm was owned by a holding group that shared an address with Kenneth Vale's private office. It wasn't illegal, but it was intentional. Money had passed through 3 hands before reaching the foundation, dressed up to look clean, neutral, objective. But it all traced back to him. And it didn't stop there. On the foundation side, I found a digital newsletter buried on their archives site. A PDF attachment from earlier this year. Quarterly Operations Summary. Page 6. Special Funding Disbursement Approval. Small font. Legal phrasing. The kind of thing most people scroll past. But I didn't. Because under the listed approvals, alongside the executive director and finance chair, was her name. Her signature. Next to a green-lit $480,000 allocation. In coordination with Private Donor Initiative. I felt my stomach turn. That wasn't a mistake. That wasn't. I didn't know. She signed off on it. She was part of the approval chain. which meant she knew about the Shell donation route. She knew who controlled the money. She knew where it was going and what it was buying. I leaned back from the screen and stared at the wall. Not in anger, just in realization. This wasn't an affair. This was a business model. He used women to polish his reputation. They smiled for the cameras, signed for the grants, stood beside men in uniforms. I was never her husband. I was the face that made it believable. A uniform in the photo. A handshake at the gala. Someone to say, "We're so grateful." She played her part. I just didn't know I was in the cast. She reached out again. Email this time. Not dramatic. No begging. Just a line that read, "Can we talk one last time?" I said yes. Not because I wanted closure. I already had that. I just wanted to hear her say it out loud. I picked the place. Quiet bar, out of the way. No cameras. No foundation friends. No champagne. She showed up in the same calm perfection as always. Hair neat. Soft colors. Not too sharp. Not too apologetic. Just calculated. She sat down and smiled like this was a conversation. Like we were still two people sorting out a misunderstanding. I didn't smile back. "I'm glad you came," she said. "Say what you need to say," I replied. She folded her hands on the table. "You're angry." "I get it." "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm awake." She looked down. "I made mistakes." "No. You made agreements." Her jaw tightened. "It wasn't like that." I raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "Because your name's on a $480,000 transfer to a company that doesn't exist." She looked up fast. "I followed the money," I added. "And I found your signature." She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then, "It was for the mission." "The mission?" "Yes," she said. "The funding. The outreach. The programs we launched. That money made it happen." "No," I said. "That money made you happen." Her voice sharpened. "You think those donors write checks out of kindness? That the world just hands you credibility? I think you smile out of business," I said. "Every step, every word, every photo. A transaction." She shook her head. "You don't get it. That's not how these things work. We needed someone visible. Someone respectable. And you. I was the mission," I said quietly. She stopped. "I was the thing that made it look real. I was the narrative. The service. The clean image. You didn't marry me. You recruited me." Her face cracked just slightly. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" I asked. "Let me ask you something. If I had walked in on you and him that night, and I was just some average guy with a desk job, would you still be explaining it as part of the plan?" Silence. "Exactly," I said. "You didn't just cheat. You strategized." She looked down again. "You had the whole script," I added. "You knew the donors, the angles, the applause lines. You didn't fall into anything. You climbed." Her eyes welled up then, finally. "I didn't want to lose you," she said softly. I leaned back. "You never had me. You had access." For a long minute, neither of us said anything. Then she asked, "What now?" I finished my drink, set the glass down. "Now?" "Nothing," I said. "I'm not pressing charges. I'm not going public. I'm not here to ruin you." She blinked. "Because the truth?" I said. "You'll do that all by yourself." And I left. No hugs. No last look. Just a quiet exit from someone who finally understood the difference between being in love and being leveraged. They invited me again. Same foundation. New city. Same format, black tie, big money, bigger lies. I almost said no. Almost deleted the invite without reading. But then I thought, no. One more time. My way. This time, I arrived alone. No wife. No introductions. Just me, in a dark suit, clean shave, blank expression. A few people recognized me. Nods. Handshakes. Polite. Good to see you again. Smiles. She was already there. I spotted her across the room, near the sponsor tables. Still radiant. Still polished. But her eyes flicked toward me just a bit too fast, like she'd been scanning the room for a warning. She turned away quickly. Acted like it didn't matter. But it did. Kenneth Vale wasn't there. Not listed. Not thanked. Not missed. Interesting. The host took the mic halfway through the evening. Talked about values. Community. The usual gospel. Then he called my name. Something about integrity. Something about sacrifice. I walked up calmly. No notes. No script. Took the mic, looked out at the crowd. All those eyes, all that light. Same as last time. Except now, I saw it differently. I waited a beat. And then I said, sometimes the hardest thing isn't what you find behind closed doors. It's what you realize when they're wide open. Silence. Then applause. People clapped because it sounded deep. Because it fit the tone. Because it felt like something a soldier should say. But one person didn't clap. She just sat there. Still. Still as stone. Because she knew. She knew exactly what I meant. No name. No accusation. No scandal. Just a truth she couldn't spin. I nodded once. Handed the mic back. And walked off stage. Didn't stay for dessert. Didn't shake hands. Didn't say goodbye. That was my goodbye. And she heard it loud and clear. I didn't hear from her after that night. No texts. No calls. No. Why did you do that? Or, we need to talk. Just silence. The clean kind. I didn't check her socials. Didn't ask mutuals. Didn't care. I'd already said everything that mattered, in front of hundreds of people, with a single line. She knew it. That was enough. A month passed. Then two. I was back at work, back in routine. Gym. Shift. Sleep. Living like a man with no unfinished business. And then the headlines started. Small at first. Local. A short paragraph buried deep on a non-profit newswire. Audit initiated into financial structure of Valor Bridge Foundation, citing discrepancies in donor routing procedures. No names. Just tension. A few days later, another headline. 2 senior board members had stepped down to pursue personal projects, which in non-profit language means they saw the fire and ran. Then came the internal memo leak. An anonymous source shared it with a journalist. I saw the PDF posted on a military blog. Key phrases. Irregular routing of private contributions. Unclear oversight of fund disbursement. Pending federal review. And finally, the organization will temporarily suspend fundraising activities pending resolution of internal documentation concerns. Translation. They got caught. And they don't have a story that'll hold. I didn't celebrate. Didn't repost. Didn't say, told you so. Because this wasn't revenge. This was gravity. You build a house on ego in silence. Eventually it sinks. I never gave a statement. Never talked to reporters. Never even told people what I knew. Because I didn't need to. It was never about destroying her. It was about getting away before she destroyed me. After the third headline, I got a message from someone I hadn't heard from in a year. Old staff member from the foundation. All it said was, "You were right. I'm sorry. I didn't reply. I wasn't looking for apologies. I was just glad someone else saw it now. Time passed. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just steady. Like a tide, you stop fighting, and eventually, it carries you somewhere else. I transferred out 6 months later. New unit. New base. Smaller city. No fundraisers. No galas. No illusions. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not because I was ashamed, I wasn't, but because explaining it made it sound like something it wasn't. It wasn't about a cheating wife. It wasn't even about trust. It was about learning that some people look at loyalty like it's currency. And once they spend yours, they move on to the next investor. She never reached out again. Not after the collapse. Not after the press. Not after the dust settled. Which told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't trying to make it right. She was just waiting to see if it would fall apart. And when it did, she vanished. Like a campaign ad pulled after the election. I saw a headline months later. Someone else had picked up the Valor Bridge brand. New name. New leadership. Same promise. Good luck to them. As for me, I got a place off base. Simple. Quiet. Started running again. Bought a decent coffee maker. Read books I'd been putting off for years. No dramatic rebirth. No big awakening. Just peace. Because I stopped needing closure. I didn't want revenge. Didn't want justice. I'd already seen it. And it looked like this. Money passed in envelopes. Champagne poured behind curtains. A woman in designer shoes trading integrity for invitations. I wasn't her husband. I was her image. She sold everything, and I was part of the packaging. But here's the thing. She thought I'd fall apart. She thought I'd drown in it. But I didn't. I didn't become a hero. Didn't become a victim. I just didn't become one of them. And in this world, that's the win that actually matters.